Tonight, the rain has been falling for hours, and somewhere, deep in the medieval countryside, a small cottage glows quietly in the darkness. The world outside is wet and silent tonight. Rain drifts gently across the dark countryside, falling in soft, endless threads from the heavy clouds above. There are no city lights here, no distant hum of traffic, only the quiet rhythm of water touching earth. Somewhere along a narrow forest path, a faint glow appears between the trees. A small cottage, its windows flicker with the warm light of a fire burning inside. For travelers wandering the medieval countryside, a place like this meant warmth, shelter, and safety from the cold rain that soaked the long roads. But tonight, you are not a traveler rushing through the storm. Tonight, you are stepping inside. So take a slow breath. Let the sound of the rain replace the noise of the modern world. Lower the brightness of your screen and imagine the warmth of a small fire waiting just beyond the wooden door. Because tonight, we spend a quiet, rainy evening inside a medieval cottage. The rain continues to fall as you approach the cottage. Not heavy rain, but steady rain, the kind that seems to last forever. Each drop lands softly on the damp earth, darkening the narrow path that winds between the trees. The countryside around you is peaceful. Rolling fields stretch beyond the forest, hidden now beneath the darkness of the evening. Somewhere far away, a lone owl calls from the branches of an old oak tree. Its voice echoes softly through the mist. You reach the small wooden gate that leads to the cottage yard. The fence is simple, rough timber posts tied together with rope and age. Inside the yard, the scent of wet soil mixes with something warmer. Smoke, thin ribbons of wood smoke, drift slowly from the stone chimney above the cottage roof. The cottage itself is small, built from thick wooden beams and pale plaster walls. The roof is steep, covered with straw that rustles gently beneath the rain. In medieval villages, cottages like this were common. Most families lived in homes no larger than a single room. Inside that room, life unfolded, cooking, sleeping, working, resting, all beneath the same wooden roof. You step closer to the heavy wooden door. Warm light glows through the small cracks between the boards. The fire inside must still be burning strong. The sound of rain fades slightly as you stand beneath the overhang of the roof. You raise your hand and slowly push the door open. It creaks softly. Inside, warm air greets you immediately. The cottage smells of firewood, wool blankets, and fresh bread. The warmth feels almost magical after the cool, damp air outside. In the center of the room, a fire burns inside a simple stone hearth. Orange flames dance around thick pieces of oak wood. The light flickers across the walls, casting long shadows that move slowly along the wooden beams above. The cast iron pot hangs over the fire. Steam rises gently from its lid. Some kind of stew cooks quietly inside. The scent of onions and herbs fills the room. Simple food, but comforting. Beside the fire sits a wooden table. Its surface is worn smooth by years of use. A loaf of bread rests there beside a small knife and a clay cup filled with dark ale. Everything inside the cottage feels calm, protected from the storm outside. The rain continues tapping softly against the roof. But here, inside these walls, the world feels slow, safe, and warm. The rain grows slightly stronger now. You hear it clearly against the straw roof above. Soft at first, then steady. Thousands of small drops landing gently across the thatch. In a medieval cottage, this sound would have been familiar. Comforting, even. Rain meant the fields would grow, the crops would survive, the streams would fill again, and inside the cottage, it meant a perfect excuse to stay close to the fire. You move closer to the hearth. The heat spreads gently across the room. Your boots rest on the rough wooden floorboards. They creak slightly beneath your weight. Across the room, a wooden spinning wheel sits beside a small stool. Earlier in the evening, someone may have been working there, spinning wool into thread for clothing. In medieval life, evenings were rarely idle. People worked until the daylight disappeared. But now, with the rain falling and darkness settling across the countryside, the cottage has grown quiet. Only the fire moves. The flames shift and curl around the wood. Occasionally, a log cracks softly, sending a small burst of sparks into the air. The pot above the fire bubbles gently. You lift the lid for a moment. Warm steam rises into the room. Inside the pot, a simple stew simmers slowly. Carrots, barley. Outside, the rain continues its endless rhythm. Somewhere beyond the cottage walls, water gathers in small puddles along the muddy paths. The forest grows darker, the world grows quieter, and inside the cottage, the evening stretches gently forward, a peaceful moment, protected from the storm. The fire in the hearth burns steadily now. Its light fills the small cottage with a soft orange glow, pushing the darkness gently back toward the corners of the room. Outside, the rain continues falling in quiet persistence. Not a violent storm, but a patient rain, the kind that can last an entire evening, sometimes an entire night. Inside the cottage, the warmth from the fire spreads slowly through the wooden beams and stone floor. You move closer to the table where the loaf of bread rests. Its crust is thick and golden brown, baked earlier that day in a stone oven somewhere nearby. Bread was the heart of most medieval meals. Without it, the table felt empty. You take the small knife and slice into the loaf. The crust cracks gently. Inside, the bread is soft and warm. Steam escapes from the center. The smell is simple but comforting. Fresh bread, warm firewood, and the slow scent of stew simmering in the pot. You tear off a small piece and place it beside the clay cup of ale. The ale is dark, slightly bitter, and cool. In the medieval countryside, water was not always safe to drink, but ale, brewed carefully, was trusted. Even children sometimes drank a weaker version, known as small beer. Beside the fire, the stew begins to bubble more actively. You lift the lid again. The aroma grows stronger now. Onions, garlic, wild herbs gathered from the nearby fields. Perhaps thyme or sage. The ingredients swirl slowly in the warm broth. A wooden spoon rests beside the hearth. You take it and stir the pot gently. The liquid moves in slow circles. In medieval homes, meals were not rushed. Food cooked slowly, sometimes for hours, allowing every flavor to blend together. Outside, a sudden gust of wind passes through the forest. The cottage roof rustles softly beneath the rain. For a moment, the fire flickers more intensely, as if reacting to the movement of the air outside. Then everything settles again. Inside the cottage, the warmth remains steady, and the quiet evening continues. The rain has now become a constant companion to the night. You barely notice it anymore. It blends into the background, a soft rhythm against the roof above. Inside the cottage, the fire continues its gentle crackling. But the evening is not only for resting. In medieval homes, even rainy nights were often filled with small tasks, work that could be done by firelight. Near the spinning wheel, a basket of wool rests on the floor, soft bundles of raw fleece gathered earlier from sheep. The wool is thick, slightly rough, and pale in color. You sit beside the spinning wheel. The stool creaks quietly as you settle into place. The wheel itself is simple, made from carved wood, with a single large circle connected to a small spindle. You begin turning the wheel slowly. The wooden spokes move in smooth, quiet rotations. Your hands pull gently at the wool, stretching it into thin strands. Thread begins to form. This thread will eventually become cloth. Cloth will become clothing, cloaks, blankets, tunics. In the medieval world, clothing did not come from distant factories. It was made slowly, patiently, often inside cottages just like this one. The spinning wheel turns again and again. The motion becomes calming, almost hypnotic. Outside, the rain continues falling without pause. Occasionally, a drop slips through the edge of the roof and lands softly on the stone just outside the door. Drip, drip, drip. Inside the cottage, the spinning wheel slows. You place the finished thread carefully beside the basket. The evening work is nearly done. Now, only the quiet hours of night remain. The rain has begun to soften again, not stopping completely, but growing lighter. Beyond the cottage walls, the forest breathes quietly in the darkness. Tall trees sway gently in the cool night air. Their leaves whisper softly as the wind moves through them. Inside the cottage, the fire burns lower now. The logs have settled deeper into glowing embers. The flames still dance, but slower, calmer. You place another piece of oak wood onto the fire. It catches slowly. The bark darkens, then glows, then bursts into flame. Warm light fills the cottage once again. The shadows along the walls stretch and shift. Outside, the wind carries the scent of wet earth and moss. The countryside has become darker as the clouds hide the moon above. But here, inside the cottage, the fire continues to hold the night at bay. You sit quietly beside the hearth, listening to the rain, to the fire, to the distant sounds of the medieval countryside settling into sleep. Somewhere far away, a fox calls briefly in the darkness. Then silence returns. A deep, peaceful silence. The kind that only exists in places far from crowded cities. Places where night truly belongs to the earth. And in this small cottage, the calm grows deeper with every passing moment. As the evening continues, you light a small candle on the wooden table. Its flame rises gently, thin and steady. Candlelight is softer than firelight, more delicate. It creates small circles of light surrounded by gentle shadows. Beside the candle sits a small wooden cup filled with dried herbs, lavender, chamomile, mint. You place a few of the herbs into a clay mug, then pour warm water from a kettle resting near the fire. Steam rises slowly. The scent spreads through the room almost immediately. Soft, floral, relaxing. Herbal tea was common in medieval homes, not only for health, but for comfort. You sit quietly beside the table and take a slow sip. The warmth spreads through your chest. Outside, the rain grows even softer. Now it sounds almost like a whisper against the roof. Inside the cottage, the world has become still. The fire glows. The candle flickers gently. The wind moves softly through the distant trees, and the quiet rhythm of a medieval evening continues. One peaceful moment at a time. By now, the night has grown deep. The kind of deep night that only exists in the quiet countryside, far away from towns and roads. Outside the cottage, the rain continues to fall, but it has changed again. Earlier, it tapped steadily against the roof. Now it drifts, more softly, almost like a whisper across the straw thatch above. Inside the cottage, the fire burns low. Most of the tall flames have faded. What remains are glowing embers, small islands of red and gold beneath the dark wood. Every now and then, a piece of wood shifts quietly, sending a gentle shower of sparks upward into the chimney. The warmth still fills the room, but now the air feels calmer, more still. You sit beside the hearth, watching the slow movement of the embers. There's something peaceful about fire at this hour. No rush, no urgency, just quiet warmth. The clay mug of herbal tea rests on the table beside the candle. The steam has faded now. The tea has cooled slightly, but its gentle scent still lingers in the air. Outside, the wind moves softly through the countryside. The trees sway slowly in the darkness, their branches brushing against one another with a faint rustling sound. Somewhere nearby, rainwater drips from the edge of the roof. Drip, pause, drip, pause, each drop landing quietly on the stones below. In medieval cottages, nights like this were common. Long evenings spent indoors, while storms passed slowly across the land. Families would gather around the fire, talking softly, mending clothes, preparing for the next day. But tonight, the cottage feels especially peaceful. No voices, no busy movement, only the quiet companionship of the rain and fire. You lean back slightly in the wooden chair. The warmth from the hearth spreads across your hands. Your eyes grow heavier as the rhythm of the night slowly takes hold. Midnight has now passed. The world outside the cottage has grown even quieter. The rain continues, but more gently now. The clouds above the countryside drift slowly across the sky. Somewhere beyond them, the moon waits, hidden but patient. Inside the cottage, the candle burns low. Its flame has grown smaller, but still steady. The shadows on the walls move slowly, like silent figures watching over the quiet room. The fire in the hearth has settled into a deep red glow. Only an occasional flame appears now, flickering briefly before fading again. You place another small piece of wood onto the embers, not a large log, just enough to keep the warmth alive through the night. The wood catches slowly. Tiny flames appear along its edge. The cottage fills once again with a gentle orange light. Outside, the forest has entered its deepest silence. Most animals sleep now. The owls have finished their hunting. The wind has softened. Even the rain seems quieter. For a moment, it almost feels like the entire medieval world is asleep. The villages, the farms, the distant castles beyond the hills, all resting beneath the same quiet sky. And here, inside the cottage, the calm becomes almost hypnotic. The sound of rain, the soft crackle of fire, the slow movement of shadows across the walls. Together, they form a rhythm that invites the mind to slow down, to let go of the day, to drift gently towards sleep. The warmth of the cottage grows even more comforting as the night continues. You wrap a thick wool blanket around your shoulders. The fabric is heavy but soft, hand-woven wool, spun and crafted slowly by patient hands. It holds the warmth of the fire beautifully. Outside, the rain continues falling, but now it feels distant, almost like a lullaby carried by the wind. Your chair sits close to the hearth, close enough to feel the gentle heat of the embers, close enough to hear the quiet shifting of the wood. Your eyes grow heavier The candle on the table flickers once, twice, then steadies again. The herbal scent of chamomile still lingers softly in the air. It mixes with the smell of oak wood and warm bread, a comforting blend of scents that belong to simple homes. Your breathing slows. The rhythm of the rain blends with the rhythm of the fire. Together, they create a calm that fills the entire cottage. In medieval times, the nights were darker than they are today. No electric light, no glowing screens, only candlelight and fire. And because of this, sleep came more naturally. As the hours passed, people simply followed the rhythm of the night. The same rhythm you feel now, slow, peaceful, gentle. The embers glow quietly in the hearth. The rain continues its endless whisper on the roof, and the small medieval cottage rests peacefully in the darkness of the countryside. Eventually, the long night begins to soften. You do not notice it immediately. The change is subtle, almost invisible, but outside the cottage, the sky has begun its slow transformation. The rain has nearly stopped now. Only the occasional drop falls from the roof. The forest beyond the fields rests quietly beneath the fading clouds. Inside the cottage, the fire is burned down to glowing embers. The candle on the table is finally gone out, leaving only a faint trail of smoke curling upward. The room grows darker for a moment, but then something new appears. A faint gray light touches the window. Dawn, the first quiet light of morning. It slips slowly through the small glass panes, spreading gently across the wooden floor. The countryside begins to wake. Somewhere in the distance, a rooster calls. Birds stir softly among the trees. The world begins its slow return to life. Inside the cottage, the warmth of the night still lingers. The fire has done its work. The storm has passed, and the peaceful evening inside the medieval cottage has quietly reached its end. Outside, a new day begins. But for now, the calm of the rainy night still rests gently in the air, a reminder of a simpler time, a slower world, and a quiet cottage that glowed warmly against the rain.